Okay, my name is Eliza Dalton, and welcome to U.S. History Crash Course. Today we're going to talk about the 90s. Following a time of poor economics and still bearing the bitter memory of the Vietnam War, the U.S. was a strongly contested power at the dawn of the decade. But everything changed when, in the early 1990s, Gorbachev's USSR fell apart, ending almost a century of communism. Now facing the world almost unopposed, the U.S. are now the world's police. They start acting alone, intervening in many international conflicts where their presence is sometimes subject to controversy. In August of 1990, Iraq, striving for its long-lost pride, but mostly interested in Kuwait's stolen petrol, invaded the small country in just 2 days, almost unopposed. It's important to remember that at this time, the Iraqi military was the 5th largest in the world. Succeeding this attack, the Council of the United Nations issued Resolution 678 that ordered the withdrawal of the Iraqi forces from Kuwait by January 15th of 1991. But greedy of their petrol, the Iraqi did not fall back. America's president at the time, George Bush, declared that this cannot stand, which led to the first intervention of the United States in the Middle East, Operation Desert Storm, on January 17th, 1991. Operation Desert Storm is extremely popular because it was the first war to use modernized weaponry, stealth fighters, precision-guided missiles, GPS, and airborne warning control systems. In a little over a month, the United States,
helped by other countries like France,
managed to push back Saddam Hussein's army. And to this day, we still can't manage to get out of the Middle East. But moving on, despite the Civil Rights Act in 1964, there were still racial tensions in the 90s, largely due to affirmative action, the policy that favors those who suffer from discrimination, especially in relation to employment or education. Some people regard this as positive discrimination. Others say it's racism against white people. This made a lot of Caucasians feel oppressed because they had a harder time getting into colleges and jobs. Affirmative action may have helped the African Americans get out of poverty, however, it didn't resolve negative white feelings towards them. May 7th, 1991, Rodney King, a black taxi driver and previous felon, was beaten almost to death after a car chase involving 4 white police due to his speeding. The police were taken to court and acquitted, or declared not guilty. The African American population uproared, creating racial riots in Los Angeles, with more than 50 killed and 2,000 injured. This was a huge step into looking into police brutality and force, not only with African Americans, but also with racism towards Latinos and Asian Americans. You may not know it, but a lot of the most recognizable movies came from the 90s, such as Titanic, Toy Story, Home Alone, and Jurassic Park. It's time to thank your parents for raising you on such excellent motion pictures. However, your parents were weird. Family situations and family life were very different during this period. In 1990, teens, that could be your mom, had a higher share of births than did women ages 25 years and older. About a third of births were to unmarried women. When asked why they decided to have their first or only child, the overwhelming majority of parents answered, the joy of having children. But nearly half also said, there wasn't a reason, it just happened. Your mom probably said that. Perhaps the most interesting fact is that in 1990, only 8.5% of women had a college education, compared to modern days where over a third of women in the U.S. have a college education, more than even men do. In the 90s, men were still getting the most education, so birth rates for younger mothers were higher because they simply didn't go to college. A popular baby toy during this time was the Furby. These little creatures were practically made to scare. There were specific Furbies being auctioned off for over $300. By the end of the year, 27 million Furbies were sold. Aren't you glad your parents didn't buy you one of those as a stuffed animal? Or did they? Oh, and for those of you who grew up on comics and Marvel, try to imagine Spider-Man being played by the king of pop. That's right, Michael Jackson attempted to buy Marvel Comics in the 90s because he wanted to play Spider-Man. Now the recession. In 1990, the U.S. went through a recession and didn't start digging their way out until 1992. The cause can't be pinpointed to any one certain event, but many things could have contributed. In October 1987, stock markets around the world crashed. The American housing market in the late 80s had a large number of saving and loan associations that went bankrupt. The U.S. Federal Reserve raised interest rates, and even the Iraqi invasion in Kuwait in the summer of 1990 could have contributed by driving up the world's price of oil and decreasing consumer confidence. Due to this recession, 4.5 million Americans lost their job. Unemployment rates hit the highest they had been in nearly a decade, reaching almost 8% as of late 1992. Although Clinton was hated by some for his alleged affair, statistics show that during his presidency, the economy improved. During Clinton's second term, the U.S. economy was healthy, unemployment was low, and the nation experienced a major technology boom that was the rise of the internet. In 1998, the United States achieved its first federal budget surplus in 3 decades. The boy band trends that we know today all started in this era, the 90s, such as NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys. Justin Timberlake, a popular artist today, was first a part of NSYNC before his solo career. And of course, let's not forget to mention that the most important people ever to live were born in the 90s. That's the end of our show. Thanks for watching Crash Course, and
He's got a good story.